So for those of you who are not familiar with these kinds of sessions, welcome. So this is an Ask Me Anything session. So it's primarily geared towards Salesforce admins. And when I say that, it's really because when it comes to the developer world, I am probably not the best person to answer any questions. I don't know. I'm not a developer. But at the same time, you're welcome to ask any question as it relates to Salesforce products, Salesforce features, configuration, project management issues, certification, career kind of issues, anything like that. I am not going to claim to know everything, but I do know a whole lot. If there's something that I don't know, I have no hesitation in admitting I have absolutely no clue. Maybe someone else on the call can actually address your question, or collaboratively as a group, we can get you in the right direction to get your problem solved. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is David Giller. I am a Salesforce consultant. My company is Brainy8. Basically, we help companies that are either brand new to the Salesforce implementation, to the Salesforce world, or they've already been using Salesforce for some time and they need some help of some kind. So for those of you who if you have got any question whatsoever, you can feel free to put it in the chat window of Zoom. But in the meantime, I actually have a couple of questions that have come in prior to this session. So we're going to start with some of those questions, and then we'll segue over to anything that's in the chat window. So let's start with this one, which is, how do I update the lead status after the first email is sent to the lead? Now, by the way, I actually have received questions like this many, many times. And each time it sort of makes my head spin a little bit. And the reason why it makes my head spin is because there's two ways to answer this. We can answer it from the technical perspective. Technically, how do we set it up so that after an email is sent to a lead, automatically the status of that lead changes from status A to status B? That's relatively simple and straightforward. You can use either Process Builder or Flow in order to accomplish that. However, the bigger issue really is, A, why on earth would you even want to do that? And B, does that make sense? And when I say that, usually the response that I get is, well, in our process, the way we've trained our team members is when a new lead comes in, let's say someone fills out a form on a website and they get a notification, that the lead gets assigned to them. We want and expect that within 2 hours, 12 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is, we expect them to send an email back to that lead as a follow-up. And we're measuring people based on those emails. So we want to not only see the fact that the email happened, as far as we're concerned, we want to move it from, let's say, new, a status of new to a status of open. And I turn to them and I say, okay, so again, technically, we can accomplish that. It should not be rocket science to set up the configuration to automatically update the lead status. But if I was a brand new employee, and today's my first day on the job, and you're telling me that that's how I'm being measured, I'm going to set up some automation myself so that anytime a new lead is assigned to me, and maybe I won't even do an automation, I'm just going to have cut and paste. I'm going to have a standard, like a Microsoft Word document somewhere on my computer, and I'm just going to cut and paste some standard vague email that I'm going to send out, and boom, it looks like I actually sent a substantive, meaningful response to all of these leads, and I will always appear as being a stellar employee for these metrics. Is that what you want? And by sending an email, regardless of the kind of email, regardless of the context of the email, even if it's an automated email, an out-of-office auto reply by one of your team members, it should automatically, does that truly warrant moving the status of a lead from one status to another? And usually the answer is no. So, which means that even if you were to go ahead and implement this kind of automation, it's probably going to pollute your data, actually. Because just by sending an email that let's actually back it up a little bit more. What should a status signify on a lead, stage of an opportunity, status of a campaign or campaign member, or status of a case? What does that signify? That should signify milestones of progress as we are working on that thing, whatever that thing is. Just by sending an email, any email of any kind, that's not really a milestone of progress whatsoever, especially if it's a meaningless email. Anyway, so that's my take on it. I'm curious to hear what you guys think, or if you guys, any of you would respond in a different way on this particular question.
Isn't the whole purpose of a lead just something you want to convert to a contact anyway, and an opportunity and a sale? So having stages of leads sort of it's undoing the whole purpose for the lead. It makes it kind of meaningless.
I think there is definitely value in having the status of the lead, because the lead, when a new lead comes in, it's a complete stranger. And so Jim, you're 100% right. The purpose of the lead is really to either qualify or disqualify them. If we're qualifying them, we're converting them to be a contact on an account to generate an opportunity. But it's also part of the goal is if it's a dud, if it's spam, if it's, let's say, just a college student inquiring about the industry that we're in or the type of company that we're running, and they're filling out a web form, they just want to download the white paper, they're a dud as far as I as a sales rep am concerned. They are never going to purchase anything. So I should rather quickly at least characterize that lead as a dud, so that it's sort of let it sit there and collect dust. We're not converting it. So I think there is value in having the statuses of the leads. And by the way, my recommendation when it comes to lead statuses is to keep it super, super simple. To have things like new, open. Open signifies that someone is actually doing something, some proactive effort to work on that lead. New meaning it's untouched. No one has made any real effort of any kind. So new, open, disqualified, and then converted.
Converted, yes.
Yeah, so disqualified, a lot of times people don't really understand what disqualified means. They think that disqualified means we have not yet qualified them. No. Disqualified means we have vetted, we have reviewed this lead, we have flagged it as a dud. It's worthless to us. Unqualified means we have not yet qualified it. We have not yet done the due diligence of figuring out, is it a dud or not? Disqualified means we put a big X on it. This is a waste of this one is a waste of our time. So. Anyone have any other? Yeah.
We use the statuses. Hey, it's Christine. We also use statuses, and I think I told you last week, I actually, before I was an admin, worked in marketing. So we used it in marketing also because the lead is also on a journey and could be at different parts. Like we have unqualified, new, working, nurturing, and converted. And it just really explains where they are. You know, sometimes they're a lead, but they don't even know who we are. They've never heard of us. Whereas others have, and they're waiting every week for our emails. It's different statuses.
Yep. Absolutely. Anyway, anyone else have anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Along that same thought of, you know, a disqualified lead is of no use. Would you go as far as to say those should be automatically culled from the system?
No. That's I'm so glad you brought that up. That's also another very common question.
Right.
I would not delete them from the system, because if that same dud, and again, whether it might be our competitor that's doing research on us, it might be a college student, it might be a spammer, whatever it is. If that person goes and fills out another web form downloads another white paper or whatever it is, and ends up in our system again. I want to know, our team should know that this person has downloaded lots of white papers. We've classified them as a dud in the past many times over. So if you delete it, you're removing that history. You have no way of knowing that anyone within the team has already made that effort and disqualified them in the past. Now, at the same time, playing devil's advocate with myself, there might be some instances where someone reaches out, let's say downloads the white paper, and they are a dud today. They don't have the budget today, but 6 months later, they actually do have a budget. Again, someone internally should know that, yeah, my colleague Frank spoke with this person 6 months ago and disqualified her because she was flagged as a dud. She did say that she didn't have a budget, but today she's saying that she actually does have a budget. So by
I've
removing
seen that
the
1,000 times.
Yep.
Yes, we just started using WalkMe, and it took us 3 years to get to the point to sign a contract. And there were many times there was months and months and months of no communication, months. And also in our business, it can sometimes take 5 to 5 years to convert a lead.
That's right.
And also people, I've seen this 100 times, people change careers. And whereas what we did wasn't interesting to them today, they go to work somewhere else tomorrow. They know about us. And I don't mean tomorrow, but let's say 2 years from now, they remember us and call us up and say, hey, I met you and it was really interesting what you said, and things are different in my life now.
Absolutely, and that's at the individual level, Christine, but I can apply the exact same principles at the corporate level. So
I'm definitely speaking from there too. I've done B2B and B2C.
Yeah, so the corporation
and a lot more B2B.
might not, again, it could be budget, it could be it's not the right fit in terms of the industry that they're in, but 6 months later, they have redefined themselves. They have a bigger budget, they have a new CEO, they have new strategy, new agenda. Before, let's say they were not, let's say using Salesforce, and now they are using Salesforce, so they are a good fit. So whatever it might be, things can change within either at the personal level or at the corporate level to make them a good fit later on. So yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful, Samantha.
All right, let's move over to the next question. I want to make sure that we have time to address your questions that are piling up in the chat window. I definitely want to get to that too. So, okay, I have a lot of experience in IT, but I am new to Salesforce. Am I at a disadvantage? So I actually get many different variations of this question all the time. So it might be someone who has a lot of programming experience outside of the Salesforce world. It might be someone who has done IT project management, having nothing to do with Salesforce. It might be someone that has zero IT background. And suddenly, for whatever reason, they've stumbled on the world of Salesforce, the Salesforce platform, and they're curious about, they're considering shifting careers into the Salesforce platform, and they want to know, like, is it too late? Am I at a disadvantage? Are the doors closed on me? And I would say absolutely not. No, there is plenty of room for everyone. And and for those of you who are not familiar with me and my background, my educational background, I was a philosophy major and an attorney. I'm admitted to practice law in New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. Today, I do absolutely nothing that has anything to do with the legal profession whatsoever. All I do is Salesforce consulting. That's it. Salesforce training, Salesforce consulting, everything Salesforce, as if my background is in IT, as if my background is in project management and consulting and business consulting. So anyone can make their way into the Salesforce platform. Today, there are actually way better resources and way more resources than there were when I got into the Salesforce world over 12 years ago. Today, there is Trailhead. And today you can go ahead and anyone for free, anyone can log in and start learning about the Salesforce ecosystem, about the Salesforce technology, about the Salesforce products, about the Salesforce best practices. There are user groups all over the world that you can join. You can actually meet people who are actually doing this kind of stuff. So anyone can make their way into the Salesforce world. Now, even more so for someone who has an IT background, many of the fundamental principles as it relates to technology, as it relates to database architecture, as it relates to technology project management, many of, not all, but many of those principles apply seamlessly to the Salesforce world. Now, there are differences to try to, if you try to take your background in whatever it is, whether it's programming or whether it's project management or whether it's database architecture, and you try to replicate it exactly as it is in your brain because you've built a career on it and you're like, oh, this is what I've done for the past 20, 30, 50 years. So of course, this has always worked. So I'm going to simply apply the same template, the same cookie cutter in the Salesforce world. It's not exactly going to work. There are differences. That's the equivalent of saying, I've used rotary phones my entire life. You hand me a smartphone, and of course I know what to do with it. I've used phones my entire life. No, you have not used one like this. So yes, many of the underlying fundamental principles are the same, but you need to make adjustments for the new technology that the Salesforce platform provides. If you choose to ignore it, I have seen many disastrous projects that the root cause of like all of the mishaps there are from people who have had zero Salesforce experience, made no attempt to learn about Salesforce, and have tried to simply replicate whatever they did in other systems, in other databases, in other companies, to simply replicate it, blindly replicate it in the Salesforce platform. That is a recipe for disaster. Anyone have thoughts, questions on that particular one?
This is Sal Julio. I have a couple of thoughts on that, David.
Yeah, go ahead, Sal. By the way, there's a feedback loop, so I don't know if you can put on a headset or something, because even when it's only you talking, we hear it as an echo.
I do not have my headphones on me, sadly.
And that's why.
Yeah.
In the meantime, anyone else have a question?
This is Sal, number two, I guess.
Yes, Sal, go ahead.
So I want to say that there's a lot of transferable skills from the technology or the IT professional that you can apply here. I think there's also a lot of verticals in Salesforce that you can go into. So you can be a business analyst versus a administrator. There's different roles that you can play in Salesforce. So I think, and Salesforce offers through Trailhead and various ways, different paths that you can take. So I think you just need to identify which path I think is best suits your transferable skills, but also in terms of technology, it's the one thing I can say is technology always changes, and Salesforce continues to invest in its product. So you have to keep pace, or you can get outdated very quickly as well.
Sal, you are 100% right, and thank you for bringing that up. I would even take it a step further by saying, as it relates to industry expertise, let's forget about the Salesforce products per se. So let's say you have industry expertise in financial services or healthcare or home healthcare, hospital administration. Let's make believe for a minute that Salesforce does not even have products that are unique to those industries. The best practices, the understanding of the nuances, the terminology, the business processes within those kinds of industries, within those kinds of settings are critical. They're absolutely critical to apply any technology to those types of companies. And yes, so if you have background, let's say as a hospital administrator with zero IT background, and you add on top of that a layer of learning the Salesforce platform, of understanding the Salesforce technology, you are now able to apply everything that you know about hospital administration using the Salesforce technology by understanding, for example, that when a new patient comes in, you need to gather the following pieces of information. You need to gather their health insurance information, whether they're on Medicare or Medicaid, and what the Medicare Medicaid number is. You need to have a primary contact. You need to ask about the primary care physician. So those kinds of things you know, regardless of what the screen actually looks like when you first log in. So Sal, thank you for bringing that up. That's an excellent, excellent point. Yeah. Okay, the other Sal, hopefully you got a headphone and you can ask your question.
Is this better now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. So I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem since 2011. So when I first started being in the Salesforce, David's right that the resources were not as ubiquitous. You couldn't find something to even simply find, like, how do I make this report to be tabular, or how do I understand how to maybe share a lead with someone, or maybe merge accounts, as some examples. But from what I found is not only is Trailhead better, but there are people besides just David out there that just says, here's all the things available with Salesforce, which is really great. Everybody's providing those resources, giving you the platform to really learn. And from my experience, I've kind of been a hybrid of an analyst and a little bit putting in out of the box functionalities with Salesforce. You can go either way, either direction you decide to go, it's available. And I didn't originally come from a technology background myself. I actually was trying to be the next Jerry Maguire. So I wanted to be a sports agent. So I've always I've always been excited for changes, seeing things grow, analyzing things, and it's transferable. Whether it doesn't matter what industry you want to be involved in some shape or capacity, Salesforce is probably involved. And it's probably a good time to learn not only about Salesforce, but what other new technologies out there that can maybe be integrated. There's always something that builds upon another. And it's a nice thing that's available. So that's my 2 cents from Sal 1.
Yep. Thank you.
I have
No,
a
that's
question.
great. Those are some great insights. Go ahead.
This is Tina.
Oh,
Actually,
Tina,
I came. This is
someone
Tina.
else
I actually came from. Yeah.
Hello?
Go ahead, Tina. Yeah, there was,
Huh?
I think it was James who was speaking also.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Currently, I had emailed you earlier in the day, and you were nice enough to get back to me. I have a question. From somebody that has had 10 years of mixed ECM experience, and as I'm looking for jobs and I'm looking to diversify my skills, I'm constantly getting emails from recruiters of all shapes, sizes, colors, qualifications, because the title analyst is in that requisition or that thing. And I'm constantly getting, do you have Salesforce? Do you have Salesforce? Do you have Salesforce? And so I have been a bit frustrated as of late of the lack of opportunities that there tends to be for on-base roles in the Northeast, because on-base is primarily Midwest, a lot of healthcare, and I've been reading through the on-base documentation that there is now lengthy and advanced integrations between Salesforce and Workday. And Workday is the other software that I keep getting. It keeps getting pushed upon me by these different emails. So in the Salesforce universe, are there modules that go beyond lead generation and CRM that will mimic ECM modules or business process modules? Those types of functions. Does that exist in the Salesforce universe?
Okay, so I think what you're asking, James, is there anything on Trailhead that that guides someone through what it's like to be a business analyst, what it's like to gather business requirements or manage a project for the Salesforce platform? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there are. Okay, I see that there's a lengthy online free training program. If somebody goes through the effort of doing that and learning the dissertation, does that put you in a position where you're then worthy of an interview, or is that relevant experience? Meaning, like, oh well, I see that you have on-base, and you have this, and you did perceptive, and you did that. We have an opening for a Salesforce analyst.
Okay, let me explain. So there's a couple of factors going on. So let's unpack that a little bit. There's a couple of factors going on. One is the recruiters. For now, I'm going to put everything about the recruiters and their mindset, and I'm not trying to bash recruiters by any means, but the way most recruiters work, let's put that aside.
Okay.
A business analyst is the way I see it, a business analyst is a business analyst. A project manager is a project manager. It does not matter if you're managing a project on platform A or platform B, technology A or technology B. It does not matter. The role, the skills of a business analyst or a project manager would be exactly the same. Yet at the same time, to have an understanding of the Salesforce terminology and the functionality will dramatically help the business analyst or the project manager be a much more effective business analyst or project manager in the Salesforce world if they understand the out-of-the-box capability. I'll give you a simple example. I've been on the receiving end of documentation created by business analysts who know nothing about the Salesforce platform, and when they put in as a requirement of that the user should be able to add an attachment, right? They will go on to specify every format of what kind of attachment it should be. A JPEG, a PNG, a bitmap file. It should be a GIF file or an Excel spreadsheet or a PowerPoint or a Microsoft Word document or a PDF, and they'll go on and on and on. Oh my God, like in the Salesforce world, you don't need to do that. You just need to specify, they need to be able to save an attachment up until, or maybe multiple attachments, or there will only be one attachment of up to X number of megabytes or gigabytes. So what is the size of that file? So by knowing and understanding the Salesforce platform, it will allow the business analyst to ask the right questions, to use the appropriate terminology, to focus on what really matters, especially when gathering the business requirements. Very often, and I've seen this across the board, very often the business user, instead of articulating, here's what we need as a business, they're going to phrase it as a question. Well, can the system have a blue button? And the blue button should turn orange if the thing is overdue. And it should turn blue if it's not overdue. And the blue button should, can you make it that if I click on the blue button, it will automatically send an email? Forget about what the system can do, because in the Salesforce world, you can pretty much customize anything to do anything that you want, pretty much. So it's like take away all of the elements of what can the system do, and instead let's focus on what is it that the business really needs. So again, it's not rocket science at all. But in order to, I think the easiest way to bridge the gap is to do probably two things. In Trailhead, pursue all of the materials in there that are geared towards gaining the admin certification. Why? Because that will give you the fundamental, the groundwork to understand the terminology and the technology, what the system can do. It will help you understand when someone is asking a question of, can we put all of the following things on the screen? You'll know we can put whatever the hell we want on the screen. Yeah. And this way you'll simply focus on, okay, what is it that you need to have on the screen? And then who should be able to see those things on the screen? So the one thing I would suggest that you pursue, you can find you can just do a Google search. You can look on Trailhead. You'll find trail mixes for the Salesforce admin certification. The second one I would recommend is to pursue the learning materials for the Salesforce consultant certification. The reason why I'm suggesting the Salesforce consultant certification is because that is what I've found to be really the only place where Salesforce provides any guidance around gathering of business requirements, around structuring of a project, around identifying, okay, we need the following people as champions or stakeholders. Here's what a champion is of a project. Here's what a stakeholder is within a project. Here's how the role that they play in any project. And I don't think that you're going to have any big aha moments by going through those materials. I think what you're going to see is you're going to have many moments where it's like, oh, I knew that. Yeah, that's exactly what we've always done. It will give you the confidence and the reassurance that the same practices of running projects, of gathering business requirements, of vetting the business requirements are all exactly the same, whether you're in the Salesforce world or not. Does that help?
That does, yeah. Yeah, like I said, I've only been in one product basically my whole career.
Right.
And, I get kind of scared, because, I see a sea of Workday, I see a sea of Salesforce. And then when I'm having a bad day at work and I go online, I want to look for another job, there's like
Salesforce.
There's no on-base jobs, and that scares me.
It should scare you. I'm not trying to reinforce that, but one of the good things that you're experiencing right now, for better or for worse, you are realizing that there are far more career opportunities within the Salesforce ecosystem than the on-base ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it sort of sounds like your seat is not exactly on fire right now, or maybe it is. So now might be a really good opportunity to build up those skills, to become familiar with the Salesforce ecosystem and apply everything that you know from the on-base world, apply that to the Salesforce world, while also understanding what the differences are in within the Salesforce ecosystem. And I have no doubt that you can succeed. It's about how much you invest yourself in learning it and absorbing it and really running with it.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to monopolize your time, but thank you for that answer. It was very insightful.
My pleasure. Yep.
Thank
Tina,
you.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off before. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I just want to say, because I came from the IT background, back to your original question. Originally, I did the web programming, all that, and switched to the database, doing the SQL. And then I switched to Salesforce along with the company because we changed the system. I think actually it's more advantage with the IT background, because the way I think to look at the Salesforce system now, and also the database part of it, it's very helpful, to do the SQL, whatever. And then also, now I start to learn Apex. That's also, my background came in. It's like probably a little bit easier to learn that. And then I actually switched a job last year, and I found when I did the interviews, all my IT background actually helps when I look for Salesforce jobs positions, because
Sure.
because for example, like Salesforce reports is, so if sometimes like we want more complex report or whatever, I can still use my SQL to do however we want to do. So that's my experience. And I totally agree with you, David, what you said about business analysts. That's like pretty much the same everywhere. It's just like how you learn it. And then as for Salesforce, like myself, I think it's easier for me if I learn something, have the real case that I can work on.
Right, for sure.
So I don't know, like James, if you want to find Salesforce positions or jobs, like starting from the beginning, and then that get your foot into the door, but still have other team members to help you with, to get a project or whatever, and so you can, learning that way. I think that's easier than, if you don't have the real world cases and just like look at the Trailhead. The Trailhead is also very helpful, of course, but like add on the real case, it's much easier. You can think through like, oh, why I use this way, why I do it that way. That's just my 2 cents.
And actually, just to take it one step further based on what Tina just said, James, because you have a technology background with a different platform, as you're learning about the Salesforce technology, you're going to see, oh, wait a minute, this is way easier than doing it in the other, not one, but multiple systems that I am familiar with, or it's very different. And you're going to see what those differences are. And that's what's going to translate later to what I was saying before. Like, you don't need to elaborate on what file types. An attachment is an attachment. It doesn't matter. You're going to realize like it's actually way simpler. Yeah, I think it's going to be very cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep, my pleasure. Anything else that anyone wants to add on this one before I move on to the next question?
I would just say this, and I have a background where I have done something totally different from one thing to the next. I've been a credit card program manager, a marketing manager, I've been a project manager, I'm certified in project management. Now I'm a Salesforce admin. So I have gone from one thing to the other, and everything led to the next thing. And when I see a job description, I don't try to match things up. I just read it and say, can I do that? And if I think I can, then I go after it. And my resume is not built to focus really on so much as the systems that I've been able to master, if you want to say, but the problems in the business that I've solved, and maybe some ways that I went about doing that with my teams, and to show that I work really well in a team environment.
Yeah.
And I had one boss that called me a Jane of all trades because I'm not just one thing. And neither are you, James. I mean, if you've been there for a long time, you've seen a lot of change and transition, and you are a change management agent. You are probably a project manager. You are probably a trainer. And I would focus more generally maybe than with taglines.
Yeah, like
I
recently,
think that will help.
I really am a bit of a one-man shop. I haven't always been that way, but yeah, I train, I fix scanners, I write the workflow processes, I do everything. But at the end of the day, I see Salesforce admins making double what I make, and so it's kind of frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. So, and
I'll
James,
tell you
let me
one
just,
other secret is years and years and years ago, like 20 years ago, I was a recruiter at a staffing agency, and time again, I've seen people hire people that they like. And so if you come in and you have ideas and you're energetic and you have that kind of the experience that I just explained, but they like you, they often will give you a chance. I've seen companies create jobs for people that they liked. And so focus on the things that you love to do and promote those things, and just be yourself.
yeah, I agree 100%. And the only thing I'll add to that is, don't allow going back to the topic of recruiters that I sort of put aside at the get-go. Don't allow your experience with recruiters to define who you are. The recruiters are trying to find a match between the keywords in the requisition and the keywords on your resume, or the keywords that come out of your mouth. That's what they're looking to find a match for. And the recruiters who are better at what they do will take the approach that Christine just articulated and get a better understanding of who you are and the skills that you have. And maybe you have not yet had a chance to do anything hands-on in Salesforce in the real world at work, but you've learned on Trailhead, for example, Salesforce, and you've sat and gotten some certifications in Salesforce and earned badges on Trailhead. They would present you in a very factual, truthful way, but also highlighting the fact that you have interest and demonstrated your interest in learning Salesforce, and that will help you get in the door. But don't allow anything about your experience with recruiters to allow you to define yourself. You're not defined by any recruiter. You're defined by how you want to define yourself, period.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, let's move on to the next question. And by the way, it's totally cool if we don't get to all of the questions during the session. I have material for another session. It's all cool. How do I make, this is another one that I actually get pretty often. How do I make all of the fields required on the opportunity screen so that my team updates their deals? This is another one where technology-wise, it's really not a big deal. You can go ahead and make whatever you want required, but 99.9% of the time, no, I'll be so bold to say 100% of the time, the following happens. And it happens whether we're talking about the opportunity screen or the leads or contacts, accounts, activities, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. As soon as you go ahead and you think that by making fields required, you are going to instill clean data in your system, you will not. Because here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to have a sales rep who is talking to a customer. Customer expresses interest in doing business together. So I want to go ahead as the sales rep. I want to create the opportunity. The customer is not yet ready to elaborate to the level of detail for me to be able to populate all of the fields. And very often this question comes up when there's a gazillion fields on the screen and they want all of them populated. This question rarely comes up when there's only like 10 fields on the screen. It's more like when there are 60 or 80 fields on the screen and they expect the rep to populate all of them. Well, if I, as the sales rep, am talking to the customer and the customer is not yet ready, willing, or able to have the depth of the conversation for me to be able to populate all of the attributes that are on the screen, and the system is not going to allow me to hit save because I'm going to keep getting an error until I fill out all of those fields, I will do one of two things. I will either say, the hell with Salesforce, I'm putting it in Excel or on my paper pad or in a Word document. I will either do that, or I'll go into Salesforce and I'm just going to put random crap in every single field, a period, a question mark, an X, just any fictitious words. I'll put the word dinosaur in every field that's there, just so that I'm able to hit save. And either way, your end result is crap. You have a crappy system and the users completely hate it. Totally hate it. It backfires every single time. Anyone have any questions on this one?
It's a training versus technology approach. You know, I've gotten those requests and I've been pushing back lately on validation rules, where they want to add a validation rule to everything, and the users aren't going to use it. They're going to keep notes in a, paper book. You're never going to see it in Salesforce, and you're going to wonder why they complain and gripe when they have to close out a deal, because then they have to take all that data outside of Salesforce and put it in Salesforce at that moment when you're thinking, hey, you could have been entering this all along, but now that there's required and validation rules, they can't do anything. And so that's where you've got to take your hat as an admin and say, hey, this is probably more of a training solution rather than a technology solution.
And sometimes it's not even training the end users, it's training senior management. Because guess what, senior manager?
Great.
When I'm talking to a lead, they are not always ready, willing, or able to give me their email address or job title. So you go ahead and make it required, and this guy doesn't want to give me his email address, I'm going to put in fake@gmail.com in order to be able to save the record.
But you've also got to use smart practices. Like I made a quick create contact flow for my users recently, and I have first name, last name, and email because emails are unique. They want me to take off that requirement for email and just put a phone number in there. But I've told them, we can't have, I need you to have an email if you're going to use this solution. Otherwise, you can make a contact the regular way. But if you have a first name, last name, email, I can let you quickly create that. It's going to appear on the account, the opportunity contact role, and everything else.
Yep. Now, by the way, when I have these conversations with my clients, very often, I'll make the exact same argument and I'll express it the exact same way I just expressed it to all of you. I'll express it directly to my client. And my client listens to me patiently and says, David, I hear you. Can you please do it anyway? Sure, I'll go ahead and do it anyway. So I create, whether it's making the fields required or, as Brandon suggested, validation rules. And by the way, I absolutely hate the validation rules because they are usually not only nonsensical, they are very often, they conflict with each other and they conflict with the real logic of day-to-day business. But in a vacuum, it sort of makes sense by itself. And not that I hate validation rules because the functionality is wonky. No, the functionality is very damn cool. And it works beautifully. It's the way that it's very often implemented by the senior leaders requested to be implemented. Now, what I find funniest about these situations where in the end, client basically says, look, I need you to do it anyway. Can you please do it anyway? Sure, we go ahead and we do it. Let's wave the magic wand. And we have all these validation rules and we have all these fields that are required. And usually it's within a few weeks, not even a few months. It's within a few weeks. And the same person who asked me to make all of these things required comes to me with the following. Hey, Dave, I've got an Excel spreadsheet. Can you help me upload it into Salesforce? Sure, what is it? And we take a look. And let's say, like in this example, it's opportunities. So let's say it's a bunch of opportunities. Let's say they just brought some people on and they were not familiar with Salesforce. They were using Excel. And we now want to migrate all of their opportunities into Salesforce. Some of the fields that are required, or the validation rules that are implemented in Salesforce, are not existent in any form whatsoever on this Excel spreadsheet that they want me to update. So in other words, if I go ahead and I take the spreadsheet and I upload it into Salesforce, I'm going to get errors for every single row represented in that spreadsheet, because they themselves are not able to comply with their own business requirements. So in the end, what do I usually have to do? I have to temporarily go in and make all of those fields not required. I have to turn off all of the validation rules just to shove in their crappy data. And I say crappy because that data does not comply with their own rules. And then I have to go in and then reactivate all of those fields to make them required and reactivate all of the validation rules. This is what happens almost every single time. That's my experience on it.
Part of the problem is that you're not asking, and the most important question is, why are these needed?
Yeah, so usually they'll say it's needed because, so let's say something simple, like every contact we need to have the job title. Why? Because when we're inviting people to webinars and to receptions, we need to do it based on their job title. Everyone vice president and above automatically gets the following type of treatment. And that's on that. I get that. That makes sense. But we still don't always know. When someone even registers for a conference and they register for the conference and they come by our booth and we scan them, and in the end we get an Excel spreadsheet, very often we don't have a job title on that spreadsheet.
And why aren't the teams updating their deals the way you want them? I mean,
Right.
These are more questions. Ultimately, you end up becoming not just a consultant, but almost a lay psychologist.
Right.
Yeah, you have to say, why do you need these? What's so important? Can you get by with less?
Absolutely.
I call it consultative adminning, and that's what I've been telling my new admins that we've brought on here recently. You've got to take this business case and ask why we're doing it, and then provide the best solution and go forward with it.
And also, are you training the team members correctly so that they know what they really need to be putting in so that they're using it properly? I think a lot of the problem of using Salesforce, there's part of it being it's put together crappily. And another part is the team isn't being trained how it improves their value.
Also, they're not even being trained on how to use the system.
No, they're not trained on how it is helping them.
That's right.
The why behind them using it, not just the what, but the why.
Yep. And in the end, the message that comes down to the users is you're expected to use the system because we are senior management, we are Big Brother, and we want to track all of your deals, all of your phone calls, all of the leads that you're working on, period. And if you phrase it that way, you're going to get nothing but folded arms and resistance. And I don't want you looking over my shoulder. I mean, I get it. You're giving me my paycheck. I don't want you looking over my shoulder. Instead, to present it as this is a tool to help you be a more efficient sales rep, customer service rep, whatever it is, then it's a totally different ballgame. This is to help you capture your own notes so that the second time you talk to this prospect, you have your notes from the first time and it's all in one place. That changes the game. For sure.
You cut down their administrative hassle, which enables them to do the job they're being paid to do, sell stuff or whatever.
And by the way, to the point that you made before about training, I have seen, this might sound like an absurdity, but I've absolutely seen situations where the person that's asking me to make certain fields required, it's because they are essentially too lazy to tell their team members how and why, like even the why we need it. So instead, let's just make it required in the system. And they still end up with the exact same thing. If the home phone number is required in the system, and I, as the rep, I have no idea what their phone number is. I just finished the phone call with them. All I got is their mobile number. All I have is their work number. I don't have their home number. And I don't have it, and it's required. I'm just gonna make something up and hit save. And then senior management is relying on that data being accurate until they realize, oh wait, there's no way that a number of 999 99999 is a real number. No kidding.
And then
Yeah.
they blame Salesforce for being no good as a tool.
And then everyone blames Salesforce. Everyone, they're even that person's
time.
colleagues, because they say they
Yeah.
pull it board and half the data's crap.
Yep.
Yeah. So then they ask, what app can we use to clean up our data? Oh, please.
A good management training program, so the managers are asking the right questions and getting the right data out of the system.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that starts also with the consultant asking the right questions, and that may not be a how or what, it may be why.
Yeah. No, that is definitely the most important question that a consultant or Salesforce admin can ask. Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next question. How can we use list views or reports to encourage my team to keep their data clean? I actually love this question because of the simplicity of the solution. So let's take an example where, like the one I just mentioned a moment ago, where let's say home phone number is blank. And it's really important for whatever reason. Maybe all of a sudden today, we created a brand new initiative where we need to rely on the home phone number. And we absolutely recognize it's a brand new field. We just put in the field that nobody has it populated, right? So it's an initiative that we need to address. And what we want to do is we want that each person should be able to they should be able to quickly see all of their records, the records that they are primarily responsible for, where that particular field is blank. That home phone number field in this example is blank. It becomes incredibly easy to create either a list view or a report that basically is filtered by my contacts, where the home phone number, or if you're using accounts to represent household accounts, my accounts, where that particular field is blank. And you're displaying it for them in a list view. Or you could pull it as a report, and then you could even place that report on the home page. So if I go over here, for example, if we go to the home page, we can have a report chart displayed on the home page like this one that says, let's say, all my activities with a due date, which instead is all of my contacts, all of my accounts that don't have a home phone number. And it could be grouped by city, state, zip code, whatever you want. And then each individual will simply click on the report. So that they will see the high level metrics. They can then click into the underlying report in order to see the exact records that are quote unquote defective, that are, don't meet the business requirements, where each person can easily see that. Now, we could even kick it up a notch by having, let's call it a wall of shame or a wall of progress, however you want to look at it, where we have let's say, a report or a dashboard that's showing across the entire team, here's how many records per rep, per Salesforce user don't have that home phone number field populated. So it becomes very easy to use list views or reports in this way to help keep data clean and really keep a consistent process for everyone on the team.
Conditional formatting too. Big red boxes.
Yes, absolutely. Make it as ugly as you possibly can and put it right in their face. Yeah, so this way they all want it to be. And then watch when they clean up their data, they're like, I don't understand. Every time I go to the homepage, there's a section that says there's no data to display. No, that's a good thing. That means you don't have any defective data.
Yeah. Also, I've seen some people implement a dashboard that's kind of a wall of zeros. So here's all the data elements that you want to keep clean. And the goal is to try to keep that at zero. It's usually never there, but at least you can monitor how you're progressing and that it's not getting progressively worse.
Yeah.
Data golf.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we implemented, we're still implementing, we're close to getting off the project after a year, because we're actually also implementing Financial Force at the same time. So that's really like the thing that's delaying us. But anyways, when we went live, the president said, whoa, we have a lot more opportunities than that once he saw his dashboard.
All right.
So it's a good chance for all those leaders to start, supporting the system and with their teams, encouraging them to enter information because it shows up on the president's dashboard.
Unbelievable. I just want to, I'm looking now at the chat window. I want to be able to address at least some of the questions that you guys have brought up, and I realize we're getting close to the top of the hour. I can stay a little bit longer. I don't know if you guys can. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I will share the recording. I'm going to post it on YouTube. I'll share the recording with all of you. I see Marciana asked about working as a consultant. Her question is, have you or anyone on the call ever worked with a client that didn't have a concrete business structure? If so, have you ever tried to roll out configuration that give the admin technical overhead? Is that a good procedure as a consultant or an in-house admin? Generally speaking, if the organization does not have a concrete business structure, if they cannot articulate their business processes, every client that I ever work with, even before I look at their Salesforce org, and if they are eager to show me what they have going on in Salesforce, I ask them, what is it that you guys do? What are your business processes? How do you operate? How do you go from a prospect when someone is a complete stranger to turning them into a customer? What are the criteria needed? What does the typical opportunity or deal look like? And if they're using Salesforce for other things like, let's say, case management or marketing, I'll dive into similar questions along those ways. If they're not able to answer those questions, there's really nothing to talk about, because that means they're sort of loosey-goosey, throwing data a little bit all over the place, all over in Salesforce. And that's a project I would stay far away from. It's sort of like using Salesforce as like as a paperweight. Like, no, there's no rhyme or reason. So I would stay far away from that. Marciana, does that help you? It looks like you're still on. Might have stepped away. Okay, I'll just move on. Want to know how
Good
to
answer.
Thank you. Mike has a question. I want to know how to calculate the opportunity stage conversion rate. This would be how many opportunities become closed won, and what was the rate of conversion from stage to stage until close? That is a good question. There actually are some, I believe there are some even standard reports that can give you that. Very rarely do I have a client that actually asks for that. And typically once I start Googling for best practices on it, I realize, oh, there's an existing report that can show me that. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I can do a little bit of research offline to look for that and follow up with you. I'm looking to see some of the other questions here.
So David, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Sanjay. I'm calling from London. I wanted to know what to do about getting a certification in Marketing Cloud. I'm struggling with this one. I've got 5 other certs, and I feel in the UK, Marketing Cloud cloud is actually quite popular, and lots of customers are using Marketing Cloud. But if I don't have the cert, I can't get a contract, even though I'm a business analyst. It's a chicken and egg situation.
I can take that, David.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there are several Marketing Cloud certifications. There's Marketing Cloud Administrator. Okay, so I'm just looking on the Trailhead certifications credentials page. Marketing, you have Marketing Cloud Administrator, Marketing Cloud Consultant, Marketing Cloud Developer, Marketing Cloud Email Specialist, Pardot Consultant, and Pardot Specialist. All of those are dealing in the marketing area, and that just came up rather fast. I think, yeah, David,
yeah, right
there
here.
you go. Right down
So
there, the marketing credentials.
Which one do you recommend as part of the, to start me
David.
off in the Marketing Cloud ecosystem?
What's the question exactly? Like where to
start?
Where to start? Which one is the best cloud Marketing Cloud certification to take so that I can actually be a generalist?
I believe that even Marketing Cloud Administrator has some of the other ones as a prerequisite.
Okay. And is there a sandbox that I can?
So they don't give us sandbox. They give us, there's a simulator. It's a relatively new feature where there's a Marketing Cloud simulator to be able to get the hands-on experience. Yeah.
Right. And is it somewhere on Trailhead? Because this is the first time I'm hearing about the simulator.
Yes, it's all going to be within Trailhead. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So basically, if you just follow along any of these paths, I believe the email specialist is the first like prerequisite to pretty much everything else. So if you start along any of these paths, you're gonna get to it pretty quickly.
Great, thanks, guys.
Yep, my pleasure. Hang on one second. Let me see what else I missed.
David, I had a question on governor limits and kind of how individuals overcome those obstacles in Salesforce.
Yeah.
In designing and kind of explaining it to the users. So specifically, like the 10,000 best practice of contacts per accounts, just data grows on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes people import data, so many best practices or recommendations. And is it specific to just master detail records or VLOOKUP or lookup relationships as well?
I guess it really depends on what governor limits and what the use case is. Because if we're talking about, for example, uploading X number of records that are beyond, you know what, this question even came up the other day. It comes up often as it relates to sending out emails from Salesforce. And there's a limit of how many emails you can send across the entire org. There's a limit of 5,000 emails that you can send out of the entire org from Salesforce. And that's a limit. So depending on the use case, basically I'll simply just call it out for what it is, very factual. The system has a limit of how many of these things you can do within a certain time period or across the entire system. And then let's go back to, as James was talking about, Jim Vineyard was talking about earlier, the question is why? What is it that we're trying to do exactly? What is the business problem here? So if it's, let's say, sending out emails more than 5,000, well, Salesforce was never really meant to be a mass email distribution mechanism. It's meant to be for transactional emails. And if we realize that we need to send more than 5,000 per day, well, then we need to use another system to get us beyond that threshold. So it really depends on what those where you're seeing those governor limits based on like what is the use case. So if everyone just wants to upload everything into Salesforce, you know what, I have clients that just, even when it comes to, this is another rather simple example, but along the same lines, they want to start, they want to allow users to utilize the files feature in Salesforce. I cringe every time. And I caution them, be very careful, because even though you expect that people will only upload PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, Microsoft Word documents, what's preventing them from accidentally clicking a button when they're doing the upload and accidentally uploading high definition video files? And then you're going to hit the limits very quickly. And file storage in Salesforce is probably one of the most expensive cloud-based file storage options out there in the world. So my recommendation for clients that want to utilize the file storage system in Salesforce, I encourage them, if they already have something like Dropbox, Box.com, Google Drive, SharePoint, so depending on whatever it is they already have that they're already paying for, let's utilize that and figure out what is the best way to integrate that platform for cloud-based file storage into Salesforce, so that the documents, the folder structure that's already being created in that other platform is easily accessible from within Salesforce. And there are many ways to do that, by the way.
And Salesforce does work with the external data. Other places there, they actually have that's part of Platform App Builder, realizing there's things you have to do with external files, external data.
Yeah. Does that help you?
No, looking more for kind of, let's say if you have 20,000 opportunities for an account, is that a limit that Salesforce kind of says you should start breaking it up into different accounts, just to not have to do the formulas that it does for like roll-up summaries or anything else? Or is like, 50,000 associations to an account not an issue, or have you not come across that?
So I have not recently come across issues where I hit the governor, where any of my clients hit the governor limits. Usually where it comes up with, in the kind of use cases similar to what you just described, there's a lot of legacy records. So excuse me, let's say the example of the number of opportunities associated to an account. Usually in those scenarios, many of those opportunities are legacy opportunities that might have been over 10 years ago from all kinds of legacy systems that were snowballed and migrated into Salesforce. And very often, I'll go back and again, to Jim's point from earlier, why do we actually need these in Salesforce? Very often we can identify in large swaths of these records we can quote unquote archive. We can export them out of Salesforce and store them somewhere else because nobody is looking at any opportunities from over 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Just even though.
And by the way, there are many ways to do that. So you can look at, let's say, all records. So whether we're talking about contacts, accounts, opportunities, activities, all records that, let's say, were last modified 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Sometimes it's even 5 years ago. That's one way of doing it. Those records that were created by and still represented as being owned by users that are inactive. So people who have left the company, no one ever bothered taking ownership of those records, and no one has modified those records. That means they're just sitting there collecting dust. Let's get rid of them. Yeah, so in each use case, like you need to dive a little bit deeper to figure out what is the best way to define what makes sense to take out of Salesforce, store it somewhere else, store it in any other type of database system, or maybe just store it as a bunch of CSV files. Yeah. Anything else that anyone asked that you want addressed that I did not draw attention to? All right. If there's nothing else, we'll wrap it up. I definitely have more questions for our next Ask Me Anything session. Thank you for joining today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
All right, cheers, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.